Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's monthly student and graduate webinar. My name is Ben Mahesson, and I'm going to be looking after today's webinar and check in on the Q&A. And I'm absolutely thrilled today to be joined by the fantastic Antoinette Oglethorpe, who is a multi-award winning specialist in career management and mentoring. And today, Antoinette is going to answer the question of future-proofing your career and talking especially around the strategies for thriving in a changing world. Today, Antoinette, using some presentation slides, is going to discuss, how you redefine your career resilience and understanding the true essence of future-proofing and why it is no longer a luxury, but a necessity for career advancement, as well as some other very interesting topics on that kind of region. And before I hand over to Antoinette as she begins her presentation, just to tell everybody here today that I will be leaving the Q&A section open. So please feel free to put your questions into the Q&A, and I will either answer them as we go along, or at the very end of the presentation, Antoinette will leave a little time to answer some of your questions and kind of take it from there. For any of you who may have to drop out or are coming in late, we will be recording today's webinar and it will be posted on our website in the coming days. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to yourself, Antoinette.
Lovely. Thank you, Ben. Good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to be with you today to talk about this important subject. We spend, on average, 81,396 hours at work in an average lifetime. And I'm guessing that as students and graduates of MBAs, you are not average in the amount of time you spend at work. So this is a conservative number. Either way, it is too long to be unhappy. As Ben said, I'm Antoinette Oglethorpe. I'm a consultant, coach, speaker, and author of that book you see in front of you, Confident Career Conversations. I have been running my own business for a while, but before that, I had 25 years experience as an international learning and development director for companies like Accenture, Avanade, and other FTSE 500 companies. And helped lots of people develop their careers, including my own. So today is all about how focusing on your career development can help you take charge of your career, design a career on your own terms, and get the support you need to make progress. And I'd really like this to be interactive. So not only please ask questions, but I'm going to be asking you questions and getting your thoughts and comments on those too. So first, I want to talk about the changing world of work, because this is about future-proofing your career, as Ben said. And let me start by asking, what does career progression mean to you? Perhaps you could just type your answers into the chat box and leave a couple of minutes or a minute or so for you to type your thoughts, and then Ben can let me know any key themes that are coming through. So perhaps imagine a picture. If you were going to have an image on this slide that represented career progression, what might that be?
Hi, Antoinette. We've had one person say professional growth.
Lovely.
Another person saying get a role that has impact and brings about the better good. And another person has said getting more responsibility and pay, of course. So all good answers.
Okay, great. So some quite diverse answers, however, which is good to see, because quite often when I ask this, I get images like climbing a staircase, like a graph going upwards. Maybe that's somebody's view of increased responsibility and pay. The ladder, climbing the ladder. or climbing a tree, that professional growth. And I'm often, so I was quite pleased that there was greater diversity of description there, because these historical traditional views of career progression being all about upward growth and career ladders are somewhat outdated. And I'm quite surprised when I get those, because career development has changed. In the 19th century, most people worked in agricultural roles. We then had the Industrial Revolution, and people moved into factories. Then the corporations were born after World War II. Factories transpired into large corporations, and the career ladder and the term career were born. And this idea that everything moved upwards, and you spent 40 years working for an organization, and then you left with a gold watch. Now, the world of work is still changing. So, that's the changes that have happened over the last, century or so. And as we all know, the world of work is changing at the same kind of pace that the world is changing, which is an ever increasing pace. And there are 5 key shifts that are going on in the world of work right now. The first, none of us can escape, the impact that technology is having, whether that be big data, robots, automation, artificial intelligence, and massively impacting on the world of work, the roles that exist, and how individual roles are done. So, 6 months ago, probably, the idea of a prompt engineer was still in its infancy. I'm not sure if I'd even heard of that role 6 months ago, but now it's very much part of the lexicon, because artificial intelligence and prompts are very much part of our way of working. We have changing demographics. So, as we all live longer and maintain our health for longer, and in some cases have a need to work for longer because of pensions not necessarily turning out the way we would like, we now have 4 or 5 generations working side by side in the workplace, and that changes the nature of work, as well as the culture of organizations and the diversity within the workplace. The global pandemic, of course, impacted on the way we worked. Suddenly, trends that were happening anyway, like more virtual working, more home working, became very much front of mind. And suddenly we're all working from home, all working remotely, all working on screens like we are today. That accelerated, and now is still very much with us. Now we have hybrid working, a term that wasn't really in existence before COVID. And we don't really know where the pendulum swing is going to stop. Things are still changing in terms of our organizational dynamics and the way that we work together. Through those technologies and through that evolution, we realized how much easier globalization was. Some of you will already have been working for global organizations that were very used to that way of working. But globalization as a concept has now spread across every walk of work. In that, people have realized that they can compete for talent all around the world. And you now have global small businesses like my own, where I have employees in Geneva, Marseille, South Africa, as well as all over the UK. So globalization is no longer just restricted to those large international corporates. And finally, you have a business shift. We have more of a move to small businesses and entrepreneurial initiatives. So, historically, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was really quite unusual for people to start their own business. They were much more likely to go into a larger organization. Whereas now we have people with side hustles, we have people starting businesses from their bedrooms. There will be many of you, no doubt, who are either thinking of starting a business or who have already started a business and are growing it through your MBAs. So lots of different shifts that are impacting on people's jobs and organizations, and that are outside of employees' control. So employees may not be able to future-proof their jobs. Their jobs may or may not exist in 5 or 10 years' time, or if they do exist, not in the same way that it exists right now. However, employees can future-proof their careers by focusing on their own adaptability and flexibility. And that's what I'm going to encourage you to think about in this webinar, actually focusing on how you can adapt and be flexible so you can be more resilient in the face of these changes that are all around you. And one of the things that I thought we'd talk about is career paths, because in working with organizations and clients, I hear a lot of organizations saying that their employees are looking for career paths and looking for almost that sat-nav approach to career development, where they're looking for pre-programmed career routes and destinations, where they can just think, okay, well, if I want to get to be a manager in this function, then this is the path that I follow step by step. And the reality is that career paths rely on static organizations. So if you compare it to a sat-nav exists when we know what the layout of the roadways are, and can therefore map the different routes towards it. And there may be more than one route, but that route relies on that environment not changing. And we've all probably been in a situation where we've had our sat-nav and there is a new road layout or a new roundabout, and suddenly the sat-nav doesn't know where we are. It looks like we're flying through green fields. And that's why actually relying on career paths these days can be a challenge, because in a changing organization and changing world of work, it's very hard, if not impossible, to have that kind of sat-nav approach to career development. But in a way, it's no wonder that we're looking for that, because if we've come out of education and you are still in an educational environment or have been in doing an MBA, there are clear milestones. If we go right back to school days, there are clear milestones where at the end of every school year, we take exams or we undergo some form of assessment. And if we pass, we effectively get promoted to the next year. We go to university, the same thing happens. At the end of our time in the academic institution, we take some major exams. If we pass, we get recognition in the form of a degree or a diploma or a master's, and we get letters after our name. Really obvious evidence of achievement that is obvious to other people. That isn't necessarily the way careers progress. So in some environments, like if you stay in an academic institution, you may continue to progress with those very visible milestones. If you go into medicine or law or one of the professions like that, there may be some very clear evidence of milestones and progression, still relying on passing exams and getting more letters after your name. But in organizations, that's not necessarily the way it happens. It used to be 20 or 30 years ago, 30 years ago when I started my career, I went into the bottom rung of Procter & Gamble as a graduate, and I could expect that I would progress up a particular ladder to grade A and then grade B and then section head and then category head, etc., etc. But in our changing world of work, that's no longer the way it happens. And these days, if ladders still exist, they are harder to see and tougher to climb. So these days, career development is more like orienteering. It's more about you thinking about what success looks like for you, where you want to get to, and then navigating the ever-changing landscape to make progress towards that picture of future success that you have determined for yourself. Because everybody's picture of future success is different. There will be some people on this webinar where success is about growing a business, maybe growing a business, maybe selling a business. There will be others on this webinar where success is about progressing within their organization to a certain level. There will be others on this webinar where success is about actually moving out of where they are right now and starting again in a different field. And there will be others who actually are thinking about how they can change their lifestyle and how they can integrate work and home life in a very different way. So everyone's definition of success is different, and therefore navigating the landscape around you to achieve that is also going to be different for everybody. So the Oxford English Dictionary defines the word career as a person's course or progress through life. And actually career comes from the Latin word for chariot, carere. So it's much more about focusing on your journey rather than necessarily climbing a ladder of sorts or linear upward progress. And therefore, I'm going to urge you to stop defining career development as job titles or grades or promotions, but instead to think of it in terms of enjoyability and employability. So enjoyability is about the satisfaction you get from your working life. 81,396 hours. How can that be as rewarding as possible for you? How can that be as enjoyable as possible for you? How can it be as satisfying as possible for you? At the same time, it's about employability. How do you continue to develop your skills, your knowledge, your capabilities so that you can add value in your current role and build your capability in preparation for future roles, adapting to the changes that your role and your organization are going through. And the World Economic Forum says that because of all the changes going on in our world of work, 50% of all of us will need reskilling by 2025. And that data was from 3 years ago. So who knows what the percentage is now, whether we actually all still need reskilling because of the changes that have happened, or whether that number has increased or reduced. And their view on the future of jobs is that these will be the top skills that will be needed in 2025. And so they're much more around human skills and interactional skills, those things that set us apart from the technology. So you'll see there the third skill is technology use, monitoring and control, as well as technology design and programming. We need all of that because technology is taking over such a greater part of the world of work. But outside of that, we need the human skills that perhaps cannot be done by technology. So creativity, originality, initiative, reasoning, problem solving, ideation, resilience, stress tolerance, flexibility, leadership and social influence, critical thinking and analysis, and that analytical thinking and innovation. Some of these you might argue that actually technology is also able to develop. But as human beings, making the most of technology to add value in our roles and in our organizations, we need to complement that technology with the skills and qualities that only human beings can bring to the party, like empathy, for example, a subset of that leadership and social influence skill set. So let me ask you which skills you think will be most important for you to develop over the next couple of years in preparation for 2025. And therefore, what are your upskilling priorities in the next 12 months or so? Perhaps you could just type into the chat box your thoughts on that. We'll just pause to give you time to answer that question.
First one come through is AI or ChatGPT. Next one is stress resilience. Another one saying about maybe to learn cloud.
Okay.
Next is dealing with complex situations and the massive amounts of available information.
Absolutely.
And another one just come through is it's two here. So number one, although I thought I had leadership skills, but I'm not getting the positions I aim for. So I think I may need upskilling. And two, I need to strengthen financial acumen to help small companies.
Awesome.
Awesome. People management skills, AI. So yeah, some themes coming along, sustainability, how my industry can operate more efficiently, more AI. So yeah, there's definitely stuff coming around.
Fantastic. And what I would encourage you to do is, if you think about what success looks like for you, as I say, I would argue not necessarily in terms of job title or position, but instead, what you want to be doing on a day-to-day basis, where you want to be working, who you want to be working with and for, what experience you want to have at work, and then analyze what skills you need in order to progress into that area. So, for the person that wants to, progress into people management, how can you develop some of those people skills that will be needed before you get the opportunity? So one of the challenges in career development is that you need to persuade people that you are capable of doing a job that you haven't done before. When you are interviewed for a position, companies and interviewers are looking for evidence that you have the capability to perform that role so that you won't be a risk to the organization. Now, if you haven't done that role before, if this is something new for you, you need to break down that skill set. So if, for example, you want to take on people management responsibility and you've never had people management responsibility before, how can you evidence that you led and directed and managed people, maybe in a project management context, or an extracurricular context outside work? Maybe you developed a junior football team, or you led an expedition up a mountain. So thinking about what skills you need to develop in order to get the opportunities you're looking for, and then how you're going to evidence those through the opportunities that you create for yourself or that you take for yourself. Because when it comes to career development, there is a three-way partnership when it comes to responsibility. And the first responsibility is with you as employees. So employees need to be empowered to take ownership of their own career development and to create opportunities and to take opportunities and to seek out opportunities. So quite often I talk to people and they say, oh, I haven't really managed my career. I've just fallen into things and I've just gone with the flow. Well, everybody has taken responsibility for their own lives in some way. You have made decisions to apply for certain opportunities. You have made decisions to accept certain opportunities. You've made decision to carry out an MBA. You made a decision while doing your MBA, or while you are doing your MBA, how much time and energy you're going to invest into it. So, everybody, I don't believe that people just fall into their careers. We all have influenced that through the decisions we've made and the opportunities we've taken or created. Having said that, it's not something you can do on your own. So managers and mentors need to engage with individuals to help them think through what success looks like and to help them identify those opportunities or create those opportunities, or in some cases be able to offer those opportunities. And then organizations need to enable that interaction to happen and those conversations to happen. So organizations need to enable employees to be empowered and enable managers and mentors to be engaged. And the Association for MBA here is sort of acting like an organization in that it's enabling this scenario where you as employees can be more empowered to take ownership of your development. And as managers and mentors, hopefully you will also go away and engage the people that report to you in career conversations so that you can understand what they're looking for and how you can best support them. But let me ask you right now, how has your career path unfolded? Do you feel that you've taken responsibility and ownership for making it happen? Have others given you the opportunity or helped you in some way? What kind of support have you got from the organizations and companies that you've worked for?
Someone has said that a combination of being pushed and raising my hands, how their career path has unfolded. Another person has said, I worked long for a multinational, then I did my MBA.
Right.
Another person said, I've shaped my career so far. I got no help from managers, as so was the organization. So I've had to shift a lot of organizations. So I imagine moving around quite a lot. Another person said about after their MBA, they picked up a transformation project. And another person has said they moved into commissioning at the local authority, and there's no career path for that. And another person has said they have taken the initiative and then got an opportunity. And then some people also saying that it hasn't been very smooth. Sometimes things move fast, and other times much more slowly. So a very mixed bag of answers there.
Absolutely. But I hear a lot of people taking initiative, which isn't a surprise given that you're MBA students and graduates and therefore people that take initiative. One thing I would say, I specialize in going into organizations and training managers to have career conversations with their people. And it is disappointing that that is not as prevalent as I believe it should be. Having said that, and many of you will be managers of others, and so I'm urging you to change that. It's not that managers don't care about their people. It's just that they don't know how to help, and they're worried that they won't have the answers to the conversations questions that people are going to ask. And one thing I would really recommend as an individual within an organization, do not paint your manager into a corner. There is no manager, unless they are the owner of the business, that has the authority to grant you a promotion or grant you a pay rise. There are so many different dynamics that go into that decision making. There is what's going on in the market, what's going on in the economy, what's going on in your industry. There's then a whole load of organizational factors around budget responsibilities, headcount limitations, processes, succession, who's going to do your job if you go into a different job, as well as, of course, the individual factors of your performance and your potential in a new role. But again, comparing it to education, in education, it's all down to you. If you do a great job, if you work really hard, if you study hard, if you get great grades in your exams, then you get the recognition you deserve. You get the first or the 2-1 or the 2-2 or whatever it might be. So it's really all down to you. Obviously, it is influenced by the quality of your tuition, but ultimately your performance is down to you. In organizations, it's much more complicated than that. And your manager is navigating that too. However, what your manager can do is create opportunities and provide opportunities if they know what it is that you're looking for. And I've actually literally just come off a coaching call with a client of mine where she used some of the tools in my book, Confident Career Conversations, to have a conversation with one of her people about what success looked like for them. And she asked a question, which we recommend as part of our future success tool, which is if you could wave a magic wand and your career progressed the way you'd like, what would that look like? And at first he was completely overwhelmed and looked at her like a rabbit in headlights and said, can I have some time to think about that? I don't really know what to say. I wasn't prepared for that question. But she went on to ask him some of the other questions like, well, where would you be working? Who would you be working with? What would you be doing on a day-to-day basis? And this gentleman was in sales, and he said, I'm working a lot from my home office at the moment, and in an ideal world, I'd be out and about interacting with customers. I would be integrating more with our R&D team. I would be making an impact right now I feel I'm working from home a lot, I'm not really seeing anybody, I'm not really interacting, I don't really feel that I'm making an impact. And that then allowed her to say, okay, well, how about we move you on to this client, because this will give you an opportunity to travel with R&D and to get face to face with the client, and we can do this, and how about this, and how about this. So together they were able to come up with all sorts of ideas that were totally within her remit. It didn't change his responsibilities specifically, but it allowed them to set some goals that aligned with his needs and also aligned with the organization's needs. And she said if she hadn't had that conversation, she would have just cascaded the goals down from her bosses without really understanding what motivated this guy and what he was particularly interested in. So I share this story to say, whether you're an employee and or a manager, please have these conversations. If you are the employee, think about what success looks like for you. Think about how you can articulate that in a way that opens up possibilities, so that your manager can create opportunities or identify opportunities, or if you're not working at the moment, how you might have that conversation with a mentor or a colleague about looking for opportunities, or taking opportunities through volunteer work or projects or possibilities. Because, and if you're a manager, please start asking those questions, because I have made the mistake myself as a manager, thinking I knew what my employees wanted, but not necessarily having those explicit conversations with them. And this story in particular was when I was working in the City of London. I was the HR director for a global tech company called Avanade, a joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft. And one day I came into the office and one of my best team members was already there. And she said, Antoinette, can I have a word? And if you are a manager, you will know that an employee asking to see you first thing is rarely a good sign. And sure enough, she looked at me, her big brown eyes, full of anxiety, and said, Antoinette, I'm really sorry. I need to give you my resignation. I'm going back to Australia. Well, I was completely shocked. I was hurt. I was disappointed. I didn't see it coming. She was Australian. However, she had recently married a Brit. I thought she was settled in the UK. I thought she was happy in her job. I assumed that she was settled and happy in her role in the UK. And that was a huge mistake on my part as a manager, to assume and not take the initiative to have that conversation. It turned out that she had recently got married. She was thinking of starting a family. She wanted to be back close to her family in Australia, but close to her mum, when they started their family. Now, as it turned out, Avanade was a global company. We were able to transfer her to an HR role in the Sydney office, and everything worked out swimmingly for her and for the organisation, although it was a bit tough on me, because she grew to HR director for the whole of Asia Pacific. She had 2 beautiful daughters. She ended up ditching the British husband, but had a very successful career. But that could have all been an awful lot easier if we just had that conversation and been able to develop a win-win solution rather than a knee-jerk reaction. So if you are a manager, provide that support through career conversations. If you are an employee, please talk to your manager about your career aspirations, not in a way that is threatening, but in a way that asks for their support with what you're looking to achieve in the organisation. Now, I realise that it may not be possible for you to achieve what you're looking for from the organisation, but you never know until you ask. I had a situation where I was working for an insurance company in the City of London, and my husband and I decided we were relocating to Newcastle for family reasons. They had no presence in Newcastle. It was a City of London-based company. It was an insurance company, financial services. This was long before COVID. Hybrid working was not a thing. Working from home was not a thing. But I put together a business case because I was an international L&D director. I didn't actually spend a lot of time in the London office because I was always traveling the world. And I put together a business case of how I believed I could do my role from my home in Newcastle at no additional cost to the organisation. I would take on any additional costs associated with travel. And, we would measure my performance because I also knew that the quality of my work had to be maintained. And to my huge surprise, they agreed to trial it. So I put together this business case thinking, well, if they say no, I haven't lost anything. I'll be leaving anyway. But they didn't say no, they said yes. So you may think that it's not possible to get what you're looking for from your organisation, but you don't know until you ask. And if you've got a business case, who knows what they might come back and say. So I encourage you, as we start bringing this to a close and coming to Q&A, to take ownership of your career development, to have career conversations with your manager. If you are a manager, have career conversations with your people, and to seek out the mentors and resources you need to make progress. And those will be different for each one of you. But typically there's 3 different strategies to developing your career. There's developing your knowledge and skills, which we've talked about. There's developing your network. So that's mentors and resources and network contact. And there's developing your profile and raising your visibility. Making sure that you have a professional brand, either within your organization and or within your industry, so that those opportunities come to you. I say I've written a whole book on having career conversations. There's a free chapter available for download. It's aimed at managers, but the concepts, of course, apply to employees. And in fact, somebody approached me recently asking me to talk to sixth formers because they felt it would be helpful for them as well. So, you can view it through either lens. And there's a free chapter for you to download so you can see if that's helpful at all. But now it just leaves me to answer any questions or comments. So perhaps you can type those into the chat box, or I'm sure Ben will unmute you if you'd rather voice your question. Feel free to put up your hand, and we can deal with it that way.
That's good. Thank you so much for that, Antoinette. We've had one question that just came through about halfway through, asking, can you speak about the impact of age on opportunities?
Ah, interesting. Yes, that there will always be a view that you are hampered by your age, whatever that age might be. So I don't know what age that question came from, but it's probably either from somebody who is perceived to be very young in their career and therefore inexperienced, and therefore, you know, hasn't got the skills and experience for an opportunity, or for somebody at the other end of the career spectrum like myself, who then worry that we're out of date, or we're past our prime, or whatever it might be. Whatever the situation, it's about taking away the age factor and instead looking at the evidence, that you have the capability to do whatever it is you want to do. And yes, that evidence might be different depending on whether you've got 2 years experience or 20 years experience. But it comes down to actually providing that evidence. I'm coaching somebody at the moment who worries about being too young. She looks young, but she has 7 years experience in her organization. And she also worries that people still see her as the graduate she was when she joined the organization. So her challenge is to change people's perception of what she's capable of. And we have been working on her building her evidence, but also on how she presents that to others, so that they can see her contribution through her behavior in meetings. Somebody else that I was coaching, she's just started working for somebody that worked with her last 10 years ago. And she was like, I don't want them to see me as the old Marianne. I want them to see the new and improved Marianne. And there was a big global meeting recently, and she invested a lot of time in preparing for that meeting in terms of her own mindset, but also in terms of how she showed up and contributed to that meeting, in terms of her preparation, what she was wearing, where she sat, all of those factors. So I would say don't let it get in your head as a barrier, in terms of your own mindset. If you believe you will achieve, but then build up the evidence, both in terms of facts, but also stories.
I see. So it's almost allowing the work to do the talking, and not so much your age or, any other element from that part.
Yeah, I mean, it is an old-fashioned view that you need to have X years experience to be able to do X, Y, and Z. I know plenty of people that will have had 20 years experience and be less capable than somebody with less experience. But I know that there will be organizations out there that or individuals out there that have those old-fashioned views. So it's trying to shift those perceptions.
Thank you. We've had another question here. They're saying, thank you very much, Antoinette, for the very insightful presentation. What is your advice if your career aspirations and what you believe is important differs from your manager's view? Is looking to leave the only option, or is there another route, such as proving yourself, even though it might differ from your manager's views?
Oh, interesting. I mean, I think there's cultural context, which isn't what you're really saying here. But if your values differ to your organization's, then that might always be a challenge, and you might want to find an organization that is a better fit for what's important to you in terms of work. If it's your manager, then again, depending on the size of the organization, that could be a temporary thing. They might not always be your manager. I would try and see if there's some way to reconcile what's important to them with what's important to you. There is a book called Getting to Yes by Roger Urey and William Fisher, which talks about principle-based negotiation. And what they talk about is how you, rather than reconciling two different positions, which are mutually exclusive, if you get beneath the surface and look at the principles underneath those positions, you might be able to find a solution. If I use a more generic career development scenario, say, one person wants to get promoted because they feel they're adding value to the organization and they can take on greater responsibility, and the organization goes, you can't be promoted because we haven't got the headcount or the budget. Those are two irreconcilable positions. But if you look at what's important to each party, what's important to the individual is to feel that they're recognized, to feel that they're valued, to feel that they're rewarded for the work they're doing. What's important to the manager is that they retain this individual, they motivate them, they engage them. Well, promotion isn't a possibility, but maybe giving them new responsibilities, maybe asking them to represent the department at a conference, maybe sending them on a training course, maybe paying for an MBA, which comes from a different budget to the pay bucket. There might be other scenarios. So I wonder, questioner, if there is a way to reconcile what's important to you with what's important to your manager, even though they're different.
Sounds good. Thank you, Antoinette. Next question is somebody saying, I work in social services and currently doing the MBA, but it seems that my employer is not seeing the value of my MBA. I feel excited about the new knowledge I'm gaining from the MBA and see myself changing industry, possibly move it into the private sector. How do I navigate this transition?
Well, I think there's two things there. Firstly, if you feel your manager doesn't see the value of the MBA, they may not. There will be many people. And I'm a university graduate, and my husband works for a business school, so we're very passionate about education. But there are many people out there that won't. That will say, oh, you don't need a degree and you don't need the certificate and University of Life, etc., etc. So maybe actually talking more about what skills you've developed, what value you think you can now contribute that you couldn't before, how you can change your approach so it adds value. Actually looking at your learning journey, how you have grown as an individual, rather than the fact that you will have an MBA. Maybe that might be a way of your manager seeing greater value in your experience rather than the final bit of paper. Transitioning out somewhere else is about packaging up your skills, your experience, your achievements and capabilities in a way that meets the needs of what they're looking for. So if that, you will have gained, huge experience in the area you're in, dealing with restricted resources, dealing with limited headcount, dealing with high workload, dealing with politics, dealing with conflict, dealing with all sorts of people issues, managing a large team, probably, resolving personality differences, as well as all sorts of technical stuff that's involved in your job, which I don't know anything about. All of those kinds of skills and achievements are of value in many, many, many walks of life, irrespective of the technical nature of different roles. So in career development, we talk a lot about transferable skills. And that's what that means, really, is how you can package up who you are and what you've got to offer, and position it in the context of what they're looking for. And when you're applying for jobs, they're really clear what they're looking for. They're very helpful. They go, we want someone who has. And so if they say 5 years experience of managing a large team, it's like, tick, I've got 5 years experience of managing a large team.
Definitely. It's almost like treating yourself like a product and having a product proposition and then fitting it in with the correct market. So it's almost trying to sell yourself and find that perfect slot.
Absolutely. Perfect analogy. Thank you, Ben.
So I've always had people say, especially when in job interviews, ultimately you are selling your best commodity, which is yourself. So I guess it kind of plays into what you're saying there.
Absolutely. And influence is the number one skill of career development, because career development is all about influencing other people to provide you with opportunities. And I know some people feel very uncomfortable with the idea of selling. So I would transfer it to a different four-letter word. Rather than sell, help. You're helping people, meet their needs and fill their vacancy. They have a problem to solve, which is that they have a job need doing, and they're looking for somebody to help them do it. So you can be helpful to them by showing how you can perform that role.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Perfect. Okay, so we're just about approaching the hour, so that's all the time we have for questions. First, I'd like to thank you, Antoinette, for your fantastic presentation, the really interesting questions we had coming through and the answers provided. I, for one, can walk away with a lot of understanding and knowledge about this and, moving through my own personal career. And I hope all the viewers back home, from wherever you're calling from today, has also learned some interesting insights, or also had a bit of motivation for how you want your career to move. So yeah, I'd like to thank yourself, Antoinette. Thank you for everything as well. Any last words or comments or advice?
Just I always use the words take ownership. This is your journey, and make the most of it, but enjoy the journey, not just the destination. I'm very easy to find. There's only one Antoinette Oglethorpe, so if anyone wants to connect on LinkedIn, I'll be very happy to connect. And finally, I wish you the greatest of success.
Thank you very much, Antoinette. And we will have the recording posted in hopefully the next week or so, alongside links to Antoinette's webpage, to her LinkedIn, and some of her materials. Okay, so I'd like to thank everybody again, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.